death. And we never, as a society, reckoned with it. So when you look across this whole society, like I say, we've been living a bunch of lies. And we have a history of lynching in this country. And lynching is still on the books as okay in some of these places. So it's not just when I hear, we get enraged about the child molestation and rape, and I agree. But I'm saying that's just one in a long list of things that have been perpetrated against people, and people have not been able to defend themselves. And so my thing is, when you turn a blind eye to certain criminality, you become complicit. And I think we all need to take a hard look at ourselves and what this society promotes across the board. Because as Roger just suggested, when we go to the extreme in punishment in a society that is not equal, we're going to have people serving disproportionate sentences for crimes just like the cocaine versus crack thing. So, it's a harsh crime, but I think I always err in terms of let's get real justice. Let's make sure that the justice system is working, and if the system was working, we wouldn't have to go to more extreme laws, because the laws on the books would, we wouldn't even need them necessarily if we had people behaving in accordance to what we believe this society's values are, but that's just not been the case, and it never has been. Nope. So this is not something that's going to be solved by the laws. This is in the hearts of men. And this deals with the power and the abuse of power. And until we're able to look at and build some accountability around the people who have power, we're going to continue to see these types of abuses. And that again, it goes back to the people who have the money and the resources, and people, like I was saying, the people that have the power, the people that have the money and the resources.
Yeah, when I called the police one time to report a molestation crime with some children that I knew.
Hi, Jenny.
It sent such a chill over those people. It was palpable. And they immediately threatened to sue me. And, how ironic that these pedophiles think they can come sue a whistleblower. But the pedophile did end up going to jail. And I had a friend who had been molested by her grandfather, and she told me, I can't even comprehend that level of accountability with my own perpetrators. And yet that is the step that truly needs to be taken by any victim. If this happens to you or you know about it, you have to be willing to report it. And so I hope everybody will just try to think of ways we can protect the little ones, because that's our future. So thanks for letting me participate, Sabby. I can see you got a lot more people here.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Sabrina, did you see the news about Sandra Day O'Connor?
No, I haven't. What's up?
So she pretty much, in so many words, admitted that for being partisan in deciding the election for Bush in 2000.
Well, I guess that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I put it in the link earlier. I guess I'll put it again. But also, speaking of like what they was talking about before, about the what do you call it? The plan. Well, it was a plan that was a success. But did I ever tell you? I think we talked about it before, about the plan that had the CIA infiltrate the hip hop community.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, pretty much it was, in case anybody doesn't know, whatever the case was, in the late 80s, early 90s, this guy was talking about he hides his voice on one of those voice disruptors, whatever the case was, but he worked for a record company and came out with it like later on, or whatever the case was. And he was talking about how he went to one of those
Eyes Wide Shut type of mansions. If you ever saw that movie with Nicole Kidman and what's his name, Tom Cruise or whatever the case was. And they had to sign something that said you can't speak about what we're going to speak about, or else, it's not going to turn out well for you or whatever the case was. So there was a guy who was speaking about private prisons, okay, and talking about investing and so on and so forth. And there was some people over there who, who was just he didn't know what they were. He didn't know what their purpose was, but they was just standing silently or whatever. And the guy was talking about, he was like some type of early investor in Core Civic or whatever. It would turn out to be private prisons. Now, remember, this is the early 90s, okay? And he was like, okay, well, what does that got to do with us? And he told them, we want you to start turning these rappers away from talking about things that Public Enemy and KRS-One were talking about. Was like KRS-One would always talk about like Afrocentrism and Black history and so on and so forth in his music. And Public Enemy was more of a '60s revolutionary H-Rap Brown, Bobby Seals, Stokely Carmichael, Eldridge Cleaver, and Fred Hampton, and so on and so forth. And they say, yeah, we want you to turn, like tell the rappers, at least the ones that are up and coming, to talk more criminality stuff. Talk more. They didn't have the word gangster rap yet. You feel what I'm saying? And right. One of the guys was just like, "Hey, this is ridiculous. How are you gonna do this? How are you gonna tell me how to run my company?" And then those guys who were standing silent rushed him out of there. And then when they went to go help him, one of them like showed a gun. Like he didn't unholster the gun, but one of the people showed a gun to him, like, you don't want to mess with this. You feel what I'm saying? So he was just talking about throughout the years, throughout the 90s, how he was seeing where hip hop went to, how it ended up being, doing selling drugs, doing violence, killing, all that different type of stuff, misogyny, all of that. He said he would see the other record producers at these parties and they would just have that nonverbal eye contact, like, yeah, you know what I mean? So, and then you got to look at what was happening. That was the early 90s when Clinton was coming into office. When Joe Biden first tried to pass his crime bill, actually, he tried to pass it during in the 80s, and Reagan was just like, what the hell is this? I'm not signing this thing, because he saw it more as expensive government resources. And if you remember, during that early 90s, Joe Biden's crime bill didn't pass the first time, it passed the second time once they put it together with the Violence Against Women's Act, which is why Bernie Sanders voted for it in '94. So when you take a look at it, it kind of all lines up because back then, in the 80s, hip hop was independent record companies. It wasn't making money. It was all underground. People weren't talking about shooting, killing, murdering. Women weren't referred to as B's and H's. They was referred to as the ladies. The ladies in the house say, oh, whatever the case is, right? Then you got to, once they saw it was a moneymaker, that's when the corporate record companies started getting involved. And that's when the private prisons, just like, hey, maybe we could do something with this, because you have to remember, they used to take, these private prisons used to go to black areas when, these black kids was in the 4th grade and look at how they were doing on like test scores and how they were, yeah, this kid's not doing well in school, so we can invest. Okay, so when he gets like around the teenage in 10 years, 20 years or whatever, we can make money off of him by making sure these laws and, make sure that he'll probably be one of the people in prison. So we're going to try to steer him in that direction instead of steering him toward, a better life or whatever the case is. So it kind of coincides with the, what everyone was talking about, the pedophile stuff, but it's a different type of conspiracy, pretty much.
That's interesting. Let's bring in Arthur. Arthur, you're on the mic. You just got to unmute. Just gotta hit that unmute button. There you go. What's up?
Hey, Sabby, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Cool. Love you. Love the show. Love RBN. Great to finally talk to you. The whole Epstein thing, like a few callers have been saying, I'm not surprised at all. I think what we've heard about, and maybe this is just the cynic in me, what we've heard about with Epstein in terms of his shenanigans and just Ghislaine Maxwell and that whole thing. I think that's the tip of the iceberg in terms of what powerful people do behind the scenes and their darkness that is going on. And as this conversation has been flowing, I was thinking back to the lady who just was let go from ABC because she was having an affair. She used to host Good Morning America. I think her name is Amy Robach or whatever. I remember that video that came out where she was complaining that in 2015 she had an interview with some woman who implicated Epstein and Prince William in child sexual abuse, and she was working for ABC at the time, of course, and ABC wouldn't air the interview. And when the Epstein thing finally came out, she was upset because, she felt like she had scooped the story in before everybody, but her handlers at ABC didn't didn't choose to air it. So go figure that. It's just,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think it was one of those Project Veritas, videos that they got from somebody and released it, and she was just going off saying, I had the story and I had it. I had the story, I had the interview, it's on tape. But essentially the higher ups at ABC, whoever that was at the time, they elected not to air it. So it just makes you wonder why they wouldn't do it. And it's because powerful people would have been implicated, and powerful people have a way of influencing their media arm to not cover stories that are favorable to them.
This is true because some of these companies are shareholders of these networks, like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. They're shareholders for a lot of these networks. So that's a big part of the problem, is that you do have very, like you said, very powerful people that are really calling the shots. And the commentators and the reporters on these networks, they're just there just to read a teleprompter for the most part.
Yeah, I remember that. What Office talking about. Sam, you probably knew about it, but you probably forgot. But I remember what he's talking about.
Because this is the woman that wasn't this the woman that she was having an affair. She was caught out. Wasn't it the guy, one of her co-workers?
Yeah, it was her co-host.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Told you. I remember. Yep. So that was definitely a thing, and just in general, I'm always prepared to be disappointed by someone that I might hold in high regard. And with Chomsky, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, even though this is Noam Chomsky, that all of us who subscribe to being on the left have been either directly or indirectly influenced by. The most charitable, somewhat excuse that I heard that maybe he might possibly have met with him is that Chomsky, being an intellectual, he has to, as part of being an intellectual, be able to hold diverse, not that he holds these views, but be able to entertain them academically without necessarily agreeing with them. I'm like, nah, bullshit. I'm with you. He's got something on Chomsky, and that's how he was able to manipulate him for that interview. On another note, I have a story recommendation that I think would be, at least I think it would be, right up you and JB's alley on the Sabby and JB show. Somebody has to peel back the layers on this story that broke. I think it was last week, where TD Jakes and Wells Fargo Bank has announced this $1 billion partnership to. Arthur, are you reading my mind?
What? Okay.
Arthur, are you reading my mind?
I didn't hear about this. This is interesting.
Yeah. Oh my God. Get out of my head. It's a $1 billion partnership. It's a $1 billion partnership. What's up, Laura? Where they're supposed to be building, see if you heard this before. They're supposed to be building housing, and they describe this as going to be mixed income housing. Hold with on. The theory of, hold on, Laura. This housing is going to be to where you're going to have diverse people with diverse levels of income sharing this housing. And somebody's got to blow the lid on this thing. I mean, besides the fact that Wells Fargo, with their problematic history of, 53% of Black people that have applied for loans have been denied, and Black people getting higher interest rates than others, and Wells Fargo employees being pressured to create accounts for customers that didn't create. I mean, that problematic history. But whenever you start talking about building housing, and when you start talking about, oh, this is going to be mixed income housing, and this is going to be good for Black people. Whenever you start talking about that, let's take those terms, mixed income housing, and let's call it what it really is, a recipe for gentrification.
There you go.
And somebody's got to peel the layers. And as soon as I saw that story, because I love the Sabby and JB show. As soon as I saw that story, I was like, that would be perfect for them. So
I'll mention it. Tell this to JB. He's probably really interested in that.
Yeah, I'm beating something. I'm trying to beat you to something, because that thing I was asking JB to do as well. You can make that your second thing on the JB and Sabby show, with that thing I was talking about before that I sent you guys a couple of weeks ago regarding the movers and shakers in the Black community that, who was it, CNN or someone was saying. I was like, look at these guys, like, what's that word? Determining who our leaders are.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I said, like, you delve into it a little bit because it was at the end of your show. But I was asking JB, I was just like, he doesn't really check his DMs too much, but I was just like, yo, you got to make this part of your show. It kind of get, because you had a death in the family or whatever the case was, so I didn't really push it too much or whatever. Yeah. But this is the perfect thing. But also, just, I was thinking more expansive. Also, when he was talking about TD Jakes, did you guys ever do that show? That I think you said you was going to do on the Black church. Did you?
No, you just reminded me.
Okay. Because that's where I thought Arthur was going, but he kind of went there, but it was like an example of a bigger problem in our community with the Black church. You know what I mean? And
we connect the two. We'll connect the two. This is a really good idea.
Because the thing is that like, was oh yes, because Ruben, yeah, I got on here late, so when I got on, Ruben was talking about something about secularism and people are not in church as much, and something like, I didn't really get the whole thing, but that's what I was thinking of, because you got, like, besides all the scandalous stuff that, like, going back to what the Jennifer, I think it was Jennifer and Crocodile was saying about, pedophiles and all different areas of different places or whatever the case was. Mm-hmm. Besides them being in the church, or besides them, like, screwing all the women in the church, even though it's consensual or whatever the case was. You also have a situation of the money. Like, they got tax exemptions, okay? But the choir, I think congregation, the people, the patrons who go to church, I know all these like different terms, they should demand a independent audit. Matter of fact, they should just hire an independent audit firm to find out, hey, all this money that we're donating, I'm seeing you sitting on this like throne looking thing. Okay. I'm looking at that car that you driving. The rest of us are living in poverty. Where do you live again? You live over there? What you doing living over there?
Don't say anything, Roger, but you know what? I think people have been trying to call that out for a long time.
Yeah.
Except for those that are actually members of the congregation. They may not feel comfortable doing it, but those of us that we're kind of on the outside looking in, we see it. But no, we need to thank you for reminding me about that, because we did say we were going to do.
What I see is, I'm not here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you now. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. What I see is a divide between the genders in the Black community, because I see, like, pretty much Black men know a pimp when we see one, and we're like, okay, I see what this dude is doing right here. But a lot of the Black women are just enthralled by, like what we was talking about earlier about idolizing, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of them are like so enthralled with the pastor or the preacher or the reverend. And it's like, Pastor such and such said, I mean, I had to actually debate a grown woman about Reverend Creflo Dollar. I'm like, his name, doesn't that tell you something? Oh no, the man's name is Reverend Creflo Dollar. What the fuck? Like, what? Do I really got to like explain this to you? Oh no, but I was just like, look, the devil can even the devil can drop knowledge, but that don't mean you should be like, oh yeah, you know what I mean? Like
but you know what, Roger and Arthur, that's the hardest part though. It's hard to convince people that your religious leader of your congregation might just be playing you guys, and they're living pretty lavishly. They have like I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. And like me and JB, we've talked about this like off screen as well. But like anytime, like there are some pastors that have like freaking Mercedes, big ass house. They got a boat and a pond and shit in the back of the house. And then you go to the church, and some of the people in the congregation are barely making just enough to get by. And then it's like they try to shame you if you don't pay tithes one Sunday.
Yes!
God gonna bless you. God gonna bless you if you pay these tithes. And I just think to myself, like, yo, if they don't have it, they don't have it. I think God would be understanding of that, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. Let me tell you a story. If you're a Black child, right, you was always forced to go to church. And once you got older, you was just like, okay, I'm done, whatever. Some come back, whatever the case is. So my sister took me to church, right? And one time she pleaded for me to just, come back, just this one time or whatever, right? Now understand, when I was a kid and they look for tithes, they would just pass the plate down the aisle, okay? But the pastor's son, who had his own church, and I don't know the hierarchy, reverend, whatever the case was, right? He would make, it wasn't a pass the plate, it was come up here and give us your money, okay? And what he would do is let's say if you got up and go to the bathroom, hey, where you going? You know what I mean? Like, like the doors would, freaking lock the doors. The doors is closed. Nobody can get out. And then when people would come up, he would brag about people giving $100, sweet little old lady giving $100 bill. And he would like shout it out like, yeah, the $100 bill, whatever. And kind of not
be as hype when someone gave $5.
Like this man is on a Twitch stream. No, he's not doing that.
But what happened?
I said like he's on a Twitch stream. Oh, Four Loco gave me $100.
Oh, I never been on Twitch, but that's funny. Yeah, like what does this do? I told my sister I ain't never coming back here again. I was happy to leave back in the '80s when I got old enough. I was like, I'm not coming back here. It's just like these people are like politicians, man. It's just like Phil Scott made a joke one time. He said, you will have a better time trying to get somebody from our community to pull. Let me see. He said, it's easy to get us to pull away from the church than it is from the Democrat Party. Just throwing a little bit of politics in there or whatever.
Interesting, because they're both connected.
Yes.
Anything else you wanted to add, Arthur and Noel? I want to get your opinion about this too, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you beat me to the punch as far as the relationship between the church and the Democratic Party. That reliable base of Democratic voters who love Obama and love Biden, Crime Bill Joe, and there's a definite direct link. But I'm gonna let you guys go because my phone is about to die.
Understand. All right, I'm bringing Kirby. Noel, what's your take on this whole?
This is very personal for me as well as troubling because of my own experiences with the church. The Black church has a very troubled and precarious type of space in Black life. On the one hand, it was the only safe space that, many of the plantations would allow the slaves to congregate and, worship or whatever you have it. And from that tradition, it became the space where a lot of the civil rights movements and the events were organized through the Black church. Martin Luther King was a Black pastor. So the Black church has played a critical role in whatever our freedoms are today. But just like today, the institution is suffering under its own lack of integrity. It has eroded over the years in terms of being responsive to the needs of the underserved Black communities. And it is really troubling to see it today. But as we gained access to mainstream America in terms of jobs and employment, people were able to get more money, contribute more money. And again, the same schism that we see that has occurred between the elites and the society as a whole and the working class, we see that same paradigm playing itself out within the Black church. And the whole contributions and the lifestyles is a very delicate line to reach because people have been programmed to think of their faith lives and spiritual lives in a different way than they necessarily think of their regular public life. So they see this as sacred and they see those relationships as sacred. And just like we were saying in the public life, when we deify people and make them icons, it is difficult to hold them accountable or even see them through the lens of their frailty and humanity. And sometimes the people closest around these figures are the least willing to see them and the most resistant because they have so much of their own stuff built up into this relationship. I was a member of my church for over 30 years before I had to separate out, and it wasn't because of my transitioning. It was because when I came to a crisis in my life, where I had been the victim of a fraud, and the church that I attended was one of the most politically active churches in this Ohio, in Cleveland. You know, they've hosted Martin Luther King back in the day. The Clintons have come through and spoke at different times. Oprah Winfrey, Jesse Jackson, you name it. They've come to my church. So it is the pastorate has always been very well connected politically. And while there could be an upside, because through these connections, these people can leverage the wheels of justice to work for you, that has not been the case for me. And so in my case, the church that I attended for years and was a member of the choir and all of these things was not there for me in my time of crisis. And I'll be honest, it was difficult for me. That was perhaps the deepest, most poignant betrayal I have felt in this entire situation, because the church, to my understanding, operating on a different set of standards, separate and apart from the political public world. So when I come to you, I am expecting a different type of leadership and a different type of honesty and commitment, because I'm a member of the church. And it wasn't there for me. And it all came through silence, and it was a very painful thing. But it caused me to see myself and my faith in a whole different way, and my connection to my God in a different way. And I realized how the pomp and circumstance and the ritual of church life has you indoctrinated, because we're all creatures of habit and we're all very routinized. And you get into these routines and you look up and you fail to assess what's really going on around you because you're busy doing your routine. So I think it does deserve examination, but it will be a tough nut to crack, because people are so insular and so protective with respect to their church families. And that's where the information is. And the thing is, you have to get the disaffected people like me who will speak truthfully about their experiences with the church. And even now, it's difficult to me because I don't want to be the one to try and tear down what is working for other people in their lives. But I simply need to be able to speak the truth about my experience within that domain.
Yeah, I understand that too. What's up, Bad Cookies? You're on the mic. Go ahead and unmute.
Sabby, how you doing tonight?
I am doing great.
That's great. Hey, I wanted to congratulate you on the job you did on May Day. That was amazing. You did really good.
Oh, thank you.
I actually wanted to talk to you about May Day. What were your impressions of May Day after you were done with your speech?
Of the event or the
event, yeah.
May Day? I mean, I wish the turnout would have been bigger. But it is what it is, you know. And I think this should have been like the number one focus, like yesterday, you know. Like, granted, it's tricky because like the Chomsky stuff came out, and because I'm not live on my channel on Mondays, like obviously, you know, I didn't cover that until tonight. But I think that we need to get the word out about what May Day is really about and what it means, because some people just don't know. Like I was taught about May Day when I was in elementary school. Actually, my teacher like taught us about. She was like, "And today is May Day." I have a teacher like she taught us about all this stuff. So like, I remember like on May Day, it was like this was like a big deal. Like I think we had like what's the things called in elementary school when you run out on the field? We had field day. I think we had field day on May Day. Like we had races and like events planned and everything. Like it was like a big deal. But anyway, that was also in Germany too. So just keep that in mind. But I will say that like this is like International Workers' Day. That's another term for May Day. And I want to make this bigger next year, you know? Like the group that did this in Boston, they do it every year. Every year. I was supposed to do it with them last year, but I think there was a conflict. I think it was the same day as another rally that I had already like committed to or something like that. And so I wasn't able to join them last year, but I was able to join this year. But I would like to make this bigger and bigger and bigger like every year if I could. But I will say, we did get a heckler. I don't know if everyone could hear that through the live stream. I'm not sure, but there was a heckler. There was one woman, she showed up and she had like a megaphone. And man, she really like let it all out. Like she was like, she said, I'm reading Sacco and Benny, or I forget those guys' names, but you guys know what I'm talking about. She was trying to read a poem from them. And the thing is like, if she wanted to speak, she could have just been a speaker. Like, that's the thing. If she would have just came up and said, can I speak? They would have let her speak. But she didn't do that.
Yeah, that's actually what someone in the comments said was he should the speaker had to talk over her, but he should have pulled a Bernie Sanders and just let her come up and talk on stage. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, but what was crazy is like the guy she interrupted. So I think the thing is this. I get what she was saying. She was saying that we can't just talk about the class problem. We have to also acknowledge the race issue here in Boston as well. Totally get what she was saying. Problem was her timing didn't work out too well because she said that and she was like, there's indigenous people and black people and da da da. But the guy who was speaking was indigenous. So it was like she was shouting over him. She wasn't shouting over someone who was white. She was shouting over an indigenous guy who honestly started off the speech saying, I am such and such. I am from such and such tribe. And da, da. And then here she just showed up and she shouted over him. And I'm like, there's an indigenous speaker speaking right now and you shouted over him. In fact, there were multiple indigenous speakers. And I was just like, wow. Like the timing was bad. I will say that too. But they definitely would have let her speak. That's the thing. But go ahead.
Yeah, my impression of that whole event was that I felt it wasn't very focused. Like when I watched the event, I didn't really get the idea that it was about workers' rights. You know, it felt more hijacked than anything. But the only one that I felt was on point was you and the Native American black fellow who did the little song at the end of his or the chant, the prayer. It was a prayer. I'm sorry, don't mean to be disrespectful.
The guy who said he was a black Indian?
Yeah, that fellow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys were like the only ones who were on point, and then everyone else kind of like hijacked it. I don't know. That was my feelings on that. But I thought you did fantastic. That's all I wanted to say on that. And as far as this Noam Chomsky thing is concerned, I don't even give a flying fuck about this dude anymore. Never cared about him ever since he said that shit about we wanting healthcare as candy. Motherfuckers are dying on the street right now because they don't have healthcare. When someone compares it to fucking candy, you have no fucking humanity left in you. I don't give a fuck about you anymore. That's all I want to say, Sabs. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, no one was tripping with that one. He really lost me. Let's bring in Hakeem. Why? Hakeem, I don't know what's going on with your account, but for some reason I cannot. I don't know if this is about something's up with your. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right, Hakeem, what's up?
Hey, Sabby, how you doing?
Hey.
Been a long time. I just, I know that anytime we're talking about children and their safety, anywhere and any place that children can be influenced or accessed is where you're gonna find all these fucking creeps. And and just like someone said earlier, it's not a surprise, like, to have our icons or people who we look up to be dethroned or to find that they're connected somehow to these kinds of activities that everybody knows is wrong or that we consider taboo. So you you know what was mentioned was, first of all, the churches, right? You got access to children in the churches. We all know about that, especially the notorious and infamous Catholic connection to child molestation and those different types um of uh and then you have of course when you're talking about the music industry and the hijacking of that, of course, because children are influenced by music, and these are how, when it's infiltrated for the purpose of changing the language, some subtle little things like that, and how that influence. I was just having a conversation today about this earlier about it doesn't matter who's raising the children, right? It could be the parents, grandparents, teachers, friends, and just people who just have access to media. And so when you can change the information that's being passed on and who's accessing children, this is the biggest problems of all is we've lost a lot of access to how we can protect kids. I mean, you see all the time how people's children are being taken away from them by child protective services, parents losing their rights all the time, and it's just something that's been slowly eroding for a long time. And unfortunately, there's very little that people feel like they can do, and therefore they don't take a lot of action because we're seeing over and over again celebrities and political figures and intellectuals, so to speak, like Noam Chomsky and all these other people who have said all these influential things and that we feel so great about. And then it turns out, oh, they're doing such and such a thing. And then what happens to them? What happens to them? Where, how many, what's the percentage that sees any kind of real serious consequences that are made real examples of? And I know that it's not an excuse for people to not take action anymore, right? But a lot of people definitely become complacent and despondent and inactive. Like it's happened to me in as far as like politics went for a long time, where I stopped taking part in any political activity whatsoever because it just felt like it was useless, like nothing was happening. And I think that discussions like these and bringing out information like that is useful in some ways, but we just have to do more as far as and of course this is not me saying that nobody here isn't, but we need to think more about what are we doing and how are we making it so that this things like this don't get swept under the rug. How do we investigate further, make it more well known that hey, we just because we've looked up to these people before doesn't mean that we can't now hold them accountable for the things that they've done. And when we talk about the black community, you see how much, regardless of whether people have done wrong or not, but you see how different, how unbalanced it is when people like Bill Cosby and R. Kelly and Michael Jackson are drugged through these things like that, and how they're portrayed when then you have other people who are not people of color, who are these intellectual or political figures, and it just seems like they get a pass. And for what reason? And I know it's not all about race and it's not all about color. And again, I want to bring it back to that this is all about the safety and protection of children. And we have to focus, this is the one main point here, is we have to realize that it's not just one area, it's not just one Epstein Island or these different people. We have to be careful and very, very closely look at anywhere where children are influenced and can be accessed. And that's where we're going to find the points where we can start to actually take some action to prevent and to, uh, unfortunately, when things happen, to respond to these types of atrocities. I'm going to call it against children. You know, I've been a big Whitney Houston fan for a long time, and you all know that song, right? I believe the children are our future. Treat them well and let them lead the way. But look what's happening. So we need to get back to that idea, and we need to figure out again what are the places like music, churches, schools where they're being influenced and where they can be accessed, and we need to start looking at that a little bit more closely and take more action. Thank you, Sabby.
Thank
I'm
you.
always impressed by the subjects that you bring up, and thanks for letting me have the floor. Be well.
Thank you so much, Hakeem. I think you bring up really good points about the bias that comes. And I want to be clear when we say children, it's not just girls, it's also boys too. And I think oftentimes, like, we're talking about like Epstein, those were girls, but there's also boys that go through this as well. And I feel like that's not talked about as often. I'll just go back to the Sandusky case, right? That's a perfect example. Those were boys. So, and I also feel like oftentimes like younger boys that have gone through this don't feel empowered to come forward because they feel like it's even more shameful if you're a male. And we need to find a way to break that stigma from that, because abuse is not just brought upon girls, it's also brought upon boys as well. But I really do feel like, based on what I've seen over the years, is that boys don't feel empowered to come forward the way that girls do, because boys feel like it's more shameful in some way, shape, or form. Go ahead, Crocodile. I saw you unmute. Okay, so I have so many things that I think about now. As far as like, I just want to interject this first. Be careful who you bring your kids around. Unfortunately, when I said this earlier, most of the people who got abused by family members. That was the first point I was going to make. And I completely agree with you about the males not coming forward, because I know some males who haven't come forward. Some was like opposite genders, some was same genders who abused them. Both were someone who was close to a family member's friend, and the other was an actual family member. The one, they just, because it was a family member, they just said, that didn't happen to you. And because it was same sex. No, that didn't happen to you. That didn't happen. And then the other one refuses to acknowledge what happened to him because it was a woman. He was, I think he said like 12 or 13, and she was like 20 something. But it made him hypersexual. And so when I would talk to him, I'd be like, these aren't normal things that you portray, because he would think that it was normal to offer sex to get rides home places and just like stuff like just like offering his body for things. And I'm like, hold on. And he couldn't have normal relationships with women either. And he'd never talked to anybody because his brothers had hyped him up after it had happened. So angry. But yeah, on top of like some just not feeling comfortable coming forward, sometimes society also tells you, oh, well, you shouldn't be mad about that. You should be happy a woman had sex with you. Like, no. I want to bring up something. There's a movie in reference to that. There's a movie that Adam Sandler made called I forget the name of. Oh, That's My Boy.
Yeah.
And the movie is about like Adam Sandler's character as a teenager. He was sleeping with his female teacher. And that movie got a lot of criticism because the critics felt like the movie basically promoted a boy, high-fiving him for sleeping with his teacher. And it's a comedy, but at the same time, it's like, nah, that shit is not cool. Like it's not okay. It doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. He was taken advantage of by an adult, and that is not okay. And I think to your point, Crocodile, like, it was considered a comedy because the character was a boy. If the character would have been a female, it would have not been considered a comedy. It would have been like a Lifetime movie, basically. And it would have been like, okay, let's learn a lesson from this movie. But because it was Adam Sandler and the character was a boy that went through this, all of a sudden it was like, okay, this is a comedy. But that's not funny. And I love Adam Sandler's like older stuff, but I felt like that movie, and it was based here too. It was like based in Boston. That movie, I felt like that was not okay, because what that says to like younger boys is like, yeah, that's like some type of street cred or some type of high five because you slept with your teacher. It almost makes it seem like for boys, like that's a good thing. And it's not a good thing regardless if you're a boy or a girl, for an adult to take advantage of a minor. That's not good, period. Go ahead, Ashura.
You just reminded me of a story that happened. I was told this story about a couple of years ago. There used to be a high school that my sister and then my younger brother used to go to. And I was talking to a guy that he used to go there too. And we were just chatting. And he said that one of the teachers banged one of the guys that were on the football team, because there's a huge field right next to the high school. And you would see these kids just training there. And they said the reason why she got caught is because he went and bragged about it. That's how it always happens.
Go ahead, Noel, because I want to say something.
This is an underexplored and underdiscussed topic, but we have to see this as the way our culture programs masculinity and the way it programs the boys who become men. And these are the men that began to be the purveyors and advance the cause of patriarchy. And we wonder why we as women have such a difficult time in this society. But we have to create that safe space. And we have not created an equal or parallel safe space for male children to discuss their traumas of any nature, because men are not supposed to handle trauma in the same way girls do. But we really have not created, in my opinion, the appropriate safe space for boys to come forward and talk about these things in safety and feel like they will be heard, and that their masculinity or their malehood or manhood is not damaged because of what has happened to them. And, just as Crocodile said, in terms of the heterosexual abuse, and as you say, Sabby, it is translated as a type of rite of passage almost. And so these men sometimes move forward with distorted understandings of the male-female relationship, and sometimes there is a hypersexuality, but there is also a latent devaluation of women within those men, because the child that was injured, no matter what you were taught to think of it, there is still an injured child somewhere deep in that hypersexual man. And sometimes it gets layered over so much that he is not able to speak to it as a man, but the hurt and the violation is still there. And and I hasten to say that in a lot of circumstances, we have come to understand that pedophiles were once abused as children themselves. So there is a cycle that could be potentially created. And so, and when it is a homosexual type of abuse, people in this society have not been able to discern pedophilia from homosexuality, and they mingle the two together and think of adult homosexual people as pedophiles, and that's a disservice to the homosexual community. So it is really, but again, it is all of the secrecy and the hiding and the shaming and all of that, which is why these things perpetuate, because they're kept in the dark. They're kept cloaked and they continue to move forward. And so we have to really be able to have these discussions with our kids. And so that the children, and you know, the sad thing about it is the kids who come from intact families have a better chance. But a lot of kids in this society that's plagued with poverty do not come from intact families, and they're the ones who are most vulnerable because the abusers can sense the need to have someone care about them, and they exploit those children. And that part is, it's just, you know, it's just horrible, and it is an atrocity. And it, I don't know.
That is incredibly important, what you just said there, Noel, about how certain children may be targeted. It's true. When I was doing my observations in public education, you know, some of the kids that came from, I don't want to say broken homes. I don't like that phrase, like broken homes. Like, but some of the kids that came from like a single family home, or they came from a home where both of the parents were working like maybe 2 jobs, or they weren't at home when their kids got home to tell them like do their homework. So some of these kids were like raising themselves basically. And this was like at elementary school here in Boston. And I remember just thinking to myself that like, wow, these kids are so mature for their age. But then as I got to know them and they would tell me about like there's just their life at home, I thought to myself, like, no wonder they're mature for their age. They're pretty much raising themselves, you know? And if the parents aren't home, then the TV is raising them, or other older people, older kids in their neighborhood are raising them. And this is also how some kids get involved in gangs, because the parent figure isn't there. No fault to the parent, because like I said, a lot of these kids' parents are working like 2 jobs. Yeah. So this goes back to capitalism. This goes back to the system at play. But I noticed that like they were growing up too fast. And there's no way, if I am observing a 3rd grade class, that these kids are already knowing about sexual activity to a level that I don't feel a 3rd grader should know. And it was very, I think, alarming to me. And I just thought to myself, like, I remember asking them, like, where did you see this? On Showtime or on HBO? And I'm like, why? And I remember thinking to myself, like, there's no one there. There's no one there to tell them, don't watch this. Or even the parents do tell them, don't watch that. If they're not there to watch them, then they don't know that they're not doing it, right? So then they're influenced by some of the other behaviors in the neighborhood when the parents are not around. And I think, you know, it goes back to a capitalist system where people have to work nonstop for the most part, or working 2 jobs or long hours so that they can't be at home with their kids to teach them these things and to help them with their homework and to cook dinner for them and all those kinds of things. This is a problem across the country. It's not just a problem like in Boston. And I think the thing is that this is why I always bring it back to the system. This is why something like May Day is so important. This is why worker rights are so important, because as long as we allow billionaires to control and manipulate and exploit the workers, then the family unit will never be whole. It'll never be the way it was like when our parents grew up or our grandparents grew up, where everybody in the neighborhood kind of knew each other and looked out for each other. It'll never be that way again because they don't have time. Like my grandmother used to tell me about growing up and how my grandfather, my great grandfather like worked and my great grandmother stayed home. I don't even know what that life is like. You know, like I'm a part of a generation where most of us have to have like 2 income. There is no, or we have to have roommates. There is no, I stay home and you work. Like I stay home and take care of the kids and you work. You know, both of us have to work.
started with my generation, X in the 80s. There was like you said, it kind of goes back to when I was that long speech that I gave like a couple of weeks ago about worker solidarity was broken when they turned us into consumers and they allowed like women to have credit cards in their name in the 70s, and then it all attaches to that, and I can tell you there was a lot of teenage pregnancies in the 80s because when both of the parents are working and you're in high school, you get home earlier than the rest of the kids. I mean, than like the grades lower. You see what I'm saying? So that also, it's not just, they might be getting involved in gangs. They also get involved in some other stuff also. You know what I mean? I knew like a lot of people I went to high school with who got pregnant before they even graduated. So that plays into it as well. Because like you said, no one's home watching the kids.
I just want to say something really quick. Also, Roger, and to pass it back to you. There were a lot of teen pregnancies in the 90s too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it continued. Because I was just saying that it started where both parents had to go to work. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? And it just continued. It's been that way since. Regarding when you said about an hour or two ago, when you said about you haven't talked about Seymour Hersh because of the YouTube stuff. You got to read it. Just do what Pasta and Fiorella used to do. Just be like, all right, we're gonna switch over to Rockfin to talk about some things. You might want to think about, like doing certain topics just on Rockfin.
Yeah, I could do that because for people who don't understand, like the larger channels, like they're not affected by this the way that I would be. Like YouTube will take down a smaller channel first because we don't make as much money for YouTube. Whereas YouTube most likely is not going to take down like Jimmy Dore's channel because Jimmy Dore makes, because he has so many subscribers, that's more revenue and money for YouTube. So usually they come after the smaller channels first. That's why like they demonetize people like Frank Analysis and like Combo Couch. But Combo Couch, like they have actually built a really good following on Rockfin. But like that's why they'll do that, is because like they know they're not losing much by demonetizing us. That's why they demonetized Jackson Hinkle. If you notice, when they demonetized Jackson Hinkle, that was before he really, really blew up. That was before he got to like over 200,000 subs. So they were like, okay, let's go ahead and take him out. But now it's just like, I mean, like Kim Iverson was on a couple days ago. Kim told you like they just like basically gave her a strike for one of her videos with RFK Jr., which was like an old video. This was like when he came on to talk about the vaccines. And that's why, even to this day, that's why I won't talk about that on YouTube, because that's a part of their policy, their guidelines. They're really picky about that one. They will not mess with.
Yeah. I mean, they even took out a video from INN because I didn't know Misty was a radio host, so I listened to the show and they were dissecting it in their video and they took it down because Jimmy Dore was on it.
No, because they brought up ivermectin in the vaccine.
Ivermectin. Yeah, Jimmy Dore was on it, so Jimmy Dore brought it up, and boom, they took it down.
But Jimmy probably thought, but I will say this, Jimmy probably thought it was safe to talk about it because it was on TNT radio, which on TNT radio it is. Jimmy probably didn't know that it was also going to be broadcast on YouTube.
Yeah, like YouTube basically makes sure they don't want to talk about anything they don't want, so you have to be careful what you post on YouTube. Also want to talk about like the video you put out the segment about the White House dinner. The one about John Legend. And I didn't notice when I saw the clip, there were 3 people behind her carrying her dress. And that reminded me like with AOC Tax the Rich dress, she had also people carrying her dress. I was like, what the fuck?
Yep.
Can you imagine Can you imagine the White House Correspondents' Dinner if Kynan and Jose crashed that? Oh, they'd be on a terrorist list. They'd be on Guantanamo Bay. I think that's their ultimate goal. Like, after that, they would have been like, "Oh, I could die now." No, I'm just kidding. Don't die. Who killed Jose?
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in real quick. Because someone asked, it was a while ago in the comments, but I wanted to clarify for them. They don't know me. They wanted to know if I took that person up on the offer. No, of course I did not take my friend up on that offer. I ended up just becoming what Noel said, just a safe haven for him. He calls me his sister and he calls me with his issues. But she hit the nail on the head with him seeing women in a bad light after the abuse. Because one of the reasons that he had so many issues with women is because he didn't really see them as people. And we would have falling outs about that sometimes because I try to give him advice like, hey, this isn't good. All women are bitches and hoes. You're not just run through them. They're also people who you can make connections with, and he was not. So like sometimes we have falling outs, but if he has an issue, he always knows he can come talk to me. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. I know we don't talk about this much, Sabby. You ever wondered why do Hollywood always like to wear a bunch of these weird clothes just because they have the money to buy them? They just don't donate that shit somewhere that fucking needs the money. That's a good question. Well, some of them are actually given, they're given those clothes. Like, they're not actually paying for them. Like, there are designers, like, I would say big name designers, like Louis Vuitton, etc. And they will create clothing for them to wear to get their name out there and to also like show it off at an award show. And like, for example, a perfect example is the Jennifer Lopez Versace dress. Yep. It's the green one. I actually don't think it's a pretty dress. No shade to J-Lo. She wore it like a champ. But I don't think it would not buy that dress, even if I had the money to. Agreed. It's ugly. It is. It's like green. I'm walking through the jungle and here's the plants and the leaves and shit. Like, I'm not really into that kind of like clothing. And so, but anyway, that Versace dress became iconic because Jennifer Lopez wore it to an awards event. And nobody could have worn it like J-Lo, like at that point in time. And I know some people have criticism of J-Lo is cool, but whatever. She wore that fucking dress. And she made the dress look good. Because it wasn't a good dress, okay? I'm sorry, Versace. The dress was shit. But she made it look good. It wasn't even the style of the dress that was a problem. It was the print. It was the green, I'm going through the jungle print. It just did not look right. But she made it work. And Jennifer Lopez, years later, wore that dress again. Mm-hmm. And she still rocked that shit. So what I'm saying is, like, her wearing it was promotion for the company. And also, like, it created a buzz. Like, other people were like, I want to get that dress. How do I get that dress? So what they'll do is, like, they'll either let a celebrity just wear it for the event or they'll give it to them. Yeah. So that's what people have to understand. A lot of times with these celebrities, some of the clothing that they're wearing, especially when they're going to award shows, they're not paying for those outfits. Or the jewelry. They have to give all that back a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Like, even if you want to buy that dress, like, some of these dresses are see-through, some of them just look fucking ridiculous. I'm like, why would you wear that shit on? And the jewelry too. Mm-hmm. Right. Because it was given to them for free. And you know, they get goodie bags too. Like when they come to those award shows, they get like goodie bags and everything. And so like one of my like supervisors, like she used to work in Hollywood and like she used to work in entertainment. So like that's why I knew about a lot of this stuff. But she was saying that like people think that celebrities pay for all this shit. They don't pay for as much as you think they do.
Like, yeah, they'll pay for their house and their car, like that kind of shit. But like, when it comes to even like the clothing and the purses, like the bags that the women carry and stuff like that, a lot of times that shit's paid for. Like, it's given to them.
Wasn't the one that AOC wore the dress? Didn't she? I don't think it was given to her, right? I think it was lended to her, and she kept the dress. And then they basically made her interns pay for the dress or some shit like that.
What? Yeah, but that's a problem if you're a politician, and that's why AOC got in trouble for that.
Yeah, because it was like she thought the dress was hers or some shit. I saw AOC in a new dress on Twitter, and someone was just fawning over her. Oh, look, it says something around, look, no breast, no plastic surgery, no implants, all natural, all cool. This is AOC. This is the queen. I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I think that video, that picture was doctored.
Okay.
And I said,
I was like, really? She got them in between.
Lucy will tell you this. Lucy has seen her in person multiple times. Lucy canvassed for AOC. AOC does not look like that in person. Mm. And this is not to like, shit on AOC, but that picture was definitely doctored. Okay, definitely. She does not have those curves, and she damn sure ain't got those boobs.
I was like, really? She had those boobs? I was like, okay.
No.
They look real.
No, she don't look. You ain't never see her look like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that easily with apps, guys. Like, there's apps where you can like make someone look like they have more curves and stuff like that. But AOC doesn't look like that, because like Lucy had talked about this before. She said like she was surprised, like the first time she met her in person, that she does not actually have like those curves and stuff like that. But,
so somebody saw you at the what was the event again? May Day? If somebody saw you at May Day and basically they docked the video and said, hey, Sabby has some yams, would that be true or false?
Come on, man.
I have some yams, like the yams you eat?
Legs.
Legs? I'm 5'5". It's Wolverine fight.
Oh my god.
I'm not tall, but I'm not short.
Okay, I'll be waiting for someone to put a doctor video saying Sabby got some yams at May Day.
Yeah, it's funny. Like everybody who's met me, and I haven't met that many people like in this space. I've only met a couple people, and it's usually through rallies. But the thing is like I'm 5'5". Most of the people I have met are taller than me. Max Blumenthal was taller than me. Tara Reid was taller than me. Who else? Shit. Garland Nixon, taller than me. Gabriel and John Shipton, Julian Assange family, they are tall. They are tall. Like, so it's funny, like you see me, like if I take pictures with like a lot of people, it looks like I'm really, really short. They're just tall. Jimmy Dore is taller than me. I thought me and Jimmy would have been the same height.
I thought Jimmy Dore had a back problem. I've never wondered if he's a tall guy. He looked more like a short dude.
I thought we would have been the same height. But no, like he's taller than me. And keep in mind, I did not have on heels during any of these interactions. So, who else did I meet that I thought was going to be shorter and they were taller? Okay, so Jose, when I met Jose, he was standing on like the top step and I was on the bottom step. So I actually don't know if Jose's taller than me or not. But I'm just going to say I hugged a lot of people and I'm usually going in at the chest. Because I'm like Rome will tell you, Rome will say, Sabby's not short either. She's tall. I'm 5'5". Rome is definitely taller than me. JB's taller than me. And my husband's taller than me. Like most people are taller than me because I'm 5'5".
Do you have to look up?
Yeah. Like usually for most people I do. I'm trying to think. There was someone I met. Actually, no. The Bank sisters, Keisha and Courtney, we're about the same height. which was interesting because on camera, they looked taller. But when I met them in person, when we went to Camp Dada, I expected them to be even taller, but we're about the same height. What about you and Lucy? That was interesting. Huh?
You're talking about Lucy right now.
We're about to, so me, Lucy, I'm gonna find that picture. Me, Lucy, Delilah, and the Banks sisters, I think we all took a picture together. We're all about the same height.
So when's that video coming out? You've been saying you would put in that video out at some point.
Oh shit! You just reminded me. Damn it, Cheryl.
I mean, you can say that. Maybe what was that? What was
I
that
know.
last? Say it was like February or some shit. You said we're gonna put that video out, and I've been wanting to watch that video.
But this is why I should not edit videos myself. I'm terrible at this. I'm gonna just go ahead and pass that over to Eric and say, Eric, can you pass yourself?
Wait, you still haven't passed it to Eric? I thought you would have done that a long time ago.
No.
Busted. She told on herself.
I did.
I thought you would have passed it a long time ago when she said that the first time. I'll pass it to Eric.
Well,
what is this video?
You fucking up.
There was fallouts from Camp Dada, and I even questioned posting it, you know.
Oh,
I questioned posting it because of that. So that kind of delayed it, but I think I should still post it. So
I don't think you want to open up. I don't think you want to open up those type of. I mean, you do what you want, but so you're not talking to the Bank sisters no more, or what?
I didn't fall out with anyone.
Okay, because you said fallout. Because I know the only person I know that was a fallout is what the Bank sister talked about. This one girl that used to be on RBN, and they said that she was skimming money from them.
There were other fallouts recently.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and there were other ones that you guys just don't know about. But I'll reach out to them and ask them if it's okay for me to still post it, and we'll see. Because some people that are in it, I know, were not genuine after the fact, which sucks.
Yeah, it's that one. You just can't get a bunch. You just can't get a bunch of women together. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it was dudes. Actually, I think there were more guys than women.
Well, I thought it was a women event. I didn't think there were dudes in there.
No, it was.
I assumed it was like for girls or some women and girls to be just bound together.
No, there were guys too. I think there were more guys than women actually. But after the fact, it was very obvious that some people were just infiltrators.
I don't know. I think you should just close that door, not reopen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll take one more call. You got somebody there, Hakeem, so I'll log on. So I said what I needed to say. Hakeem Jeffries? No, just kidding.
So, what's up, Hakeem?
Oh no, I mean, so since we've waded into somewhat shallower waters for a little bit, having worked in film and television, I know firsthand what you're talking about. A lot of times we'd give hundreds of thousands of dollars of jewelry and clothing to celebrities for music videos and movies and stuff like that, and then take it back sometimes. And some of it was given to them for exactly the reasons that you said, for them promoting it, like with the JLo dress and all that. So, and then back to a little bit deeper, to the point that was made. Yes, a lot of times guys talking about abuse that happens to them, there's a huge stigma about that, about talking about anything that happens. So, and I mean, and I know that too, just even stuff from being a kid, and also from having an intimate partnership where I was, you know, threatened and psychologically, emotionally, and physically abused by a woman. So even as an adult and a child, as a male, those things are very difficult to talk about. But so yeah, there's a little shallow and a little deep, but yeah, the whole celebrity thing is true. All right, later, guys.
Thanks so much, Hakeem. All right, let's wrap up with everybody else. Let's go to Noel. Last thoughts?
Yes, it was a wonderful evening. Really do enjoy the exchanges and the sharing of information. And this is, I think, a really good community. So I appreciate it. And again, I think you did a great job at May Day. And I just hope, everybody is able to find their space in the sun.
I hear you. Go ahead, Crocodile.
Oh, this was lovely. My first one. Um, and I love being able to learn new things and add to public discourse. It was great. I love to talk about the child marriage thing because no one knows and they need to know because we need more people to get on it. Well, yeah, it was great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Roger.
So I want people to do this as an exercise. Pick your top 3, maybe 3 to 5 top, like issues in terms of prioritizing. Because we care about a whole bunch of things. Mm-hmm. We probably, if you asked us, we probably care about 20 to 30 things. But we have to determine what we're going to prioritize. And I would like everybody here to do that exercise. Get a pen and paper, whatever, and write down one of your top 3 to 5 priorities, whether it's direct democracy, banks, income inequality, healthcare, infrastructure, housing, government accountability, public education, accountability in policing and criminal justice, corporate accountability, censorship, reparations, foreign policy, protecting children, sex trafficking, whatever it may be. And master that and see what you can do toward putting it toward a citizen ballot initiative amendment or law.
Senate bills.
That is
Assembly
awesome.
bills.
I actually I'll finish with the song.
Are you going to sing for us?
No. But someone else is going to sing for you guys. This is a song they used to play, like when I used to go clubbing. I haven't been clubbing in like years, okay? But like when I used to go clubbing and it was time, turn on the lights, time to bring people home. And they would be like, all right, this is it. This is the song they used to play. I'll never forget this. And some of you might be like, oh my God, I remember this song. And some of you might be like, I've never heard this song. But you're going to hear it now.
Can we talk for a minute? Is it that one?
This is the jam.
Let's hear it.
So let me see if I can. Okay, here it is.
Can we talk?
Here we go.
Let it be that song. Oh, no, it's not. Come on. We all know this one.
Closing time. Open all the doors and let you out into the world. Closing time. Turn all of the lights on for every boy and every girl. One last call for alcohol, so finish your whiskey and beer. Closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can stay here. Closing time. And that cookie says Sabby went to white folks bars. Yeah, no, that's what they said. When they wanted you to leave. But joke was on them because a 20-year-old can twerk to anything. So, all right, guys, closing out. Have a good night. Good morning.
We got to play chess.